Alright guys, what is going on? I'm Ryan, Trezian Racing, and I just got home this Monday, December 2nd from work. Was jamming to some Ted Nugent on the way home. Hope you guys like that. Got some news I wanted to share with everybody out there, and turns out we're gonna do some winter racing here. At least try to. Turns out that Stockton Speedway is having a New Year's Day race. So that's coming up here pretty soon. And I think I can make it. I got some things to do on the car still. Haven't touched it since my last video you guys saw. But there's really not a whole lot I need to do on it to get it ready for this race. I had to build a front bumper. And while I'm at that, I'm gonna put my new nose piece on, my new Silverado nose piece, which I hope looks pretty cool. But yeah, when I build my new bumper, I'm just gonna try to fit it to that nose piece. And so a little bit of body work involved with that, and obviously some fab work with the bumper and everything I need to make. I also need to swap the gear for Stockton. That's a half-mile track, so I gotta put my other gear in there for that. And besides that, there's not a whole lot else I need to do to the car. There were some things that I found that have kind of loosened up over time. Over the last couple of races, I need to go ahead and re-secure those things, tighten everything down, basically just go over the normal stuff like I normally do every week anyways. So I'm gonna start working on this car, and I'll keep you guys updated and show you what all I'm doing in here. And hopefully we get this thing back together and running good, and hopefully this race is going to be a good one. It's going to be cold, but at least I won't have to worry about overheating or anything like that. I've never done a winter race before, at least not in my car. So that should be interesting. It should be fun. Good way to start out the year by racing. So you guys stay tuned. All right, guys. Coming home from work right now. I didn't get anything done on my car last night. I was too busy chasing gophers, and I was still doing a little bit of engine work. So that's to be continued on getting it started and getting it all ready to go for the January 1st race. But I thought I'd take this opportunity to kind of give you guys a background on how I got started racing, and just how easy it is to get into circle track racing in general. I'll just tell you guys how I got started, and you know, how it all came about. Basically, when I was a kid, like, you know, under 10 years old, my dad took me to the racetrack a lot, our local track, Antioch Speedway, which is about 25 minutes from where I grew up, so it wasn't that far away. He knew about the track just from years prior. He had friends and stuff that are out there, I guess, that are racing. I believe him and my mom used to go to the track before I was born and stuff to watch and just be spectators, I think. I think my mom actually knew somebody who raced a long time ago, so maybe they're going to watch him or something. Anyways, he took me to a lot of those races back then, and I really enjoyed them as a kid. I don't remember them really a whole lot now, but I do have some memories of just being in the stands and seeing all the cars, and I loved it when I was a kid. And then as I got older, I started getting really heavy into sports. I played lacrosse, baseball, and mostly football. So basically throughout middle school and high school, I was really involved with that, and I didn't really go to the track a whole lot anymore. I might have gone once in a blue moon with my dad or something, but wasn't really into it like I was with my sports. And then basically towards the end of high school, I think I went for one of my birthdays. I said, oh, let's go out there. And these are back in the days where I remember you had to call the track, call their phone number, because the internet really wasn't that big back then. And you'd call the phone number in Antioch Speedway, and they would have a voice recording and saying, oh, this Saturday night, this date, we're having this class, and this class running, starts at 7 o'clock. And that's how we knew that there was a race. So we would just hope that, you know, it didn't get rained out or something, and we'd go over there and watch it. So basically I went over towards the end of high school, and I just fell in love with it all over again. I forgot how much fun it was and how much I loved being at the track. You know, when I was growing up, I knew I loved cars. I was a total gearhead and everything. My dad took me to a lot of car shows, and I actually went to some drag races too with him as well. And I knew I loved cars, but I just forgot how much I loved the dirt track, circle track aspect of it. You know, the rubbing and just the smell of the methanol in your face. And so I got hooked on it right before I ended high school, and I dragged a couple of my friends along with me to watch. And the key word there is I drugged them. I didn't really have anybody that liked racing like I did, at least dirt track, circle track racing like that. I don't think there was one person in my whole high school that was interested in going to the racetrack, Antioch Speedway, and watching some dirt racing. They were all too busy partying and doing drugs and just stuff like that. So it was kind of, I guess, shitty that I didn't really have anybody that I could go with. So I started going by myself, mostly after I moved up to Chico when I started going to college. I moved up there in 2011, and I remember the day I got dropped off at my dorm. I was going to go to a junior college up there and do their automotive program. It was Butte College. I remember the day I got dropped off, it was a Friday, and I knew that there was a track up there in Chico. I just didn't know where it was. I knew about the track, I think from word of the mouth or something, or I knew that track was in one of my video games. It was a sprint car game I had growing up. I remember that Silver Dollar Speedway was in that game, so I knew there was a track there. And as soon as I got dropped off in the parking lot, maybe like an hour or two later, I started hearing some noises, and I recognized those noises, and it was coming from the track. And I thought the track was just right next to my dorm. That's how loud it was. So this is back before I had an iPhone or any of that, so I didn't have navigation. I didn't really have a way of looking up where the track was. So I just got in my car and I started driving. I tried to start driving towards the sound, and man, I don't know if you guys have ever heard a racetrack before in town, but it sounds like it's coming from a totally opposite direction 1 minute, and then another direction another minute as you're moving around, you know. So I was, chasing a wild goose. I couldn't find it for the life of me. I ended up, I think, stopping somewhere, and I forgot how I found the track, but I found it somehow, maybe on my flip phone or something. I went on the internet, and I went there, and that was a Friday night, and I just was standing outside on the fence. I didn't even buy tickets because at that point it was already late, and I think the races are almost over at that point, but I just stood through the fence and looked in, and I knew that I had to be back the next weekend. So that pretty much started it. Every weekend or every Friday night, I was at that racetrack just watching, and I liked it a lot more than Antioch. It was a much nicer track. They had a lot more sprint cars, which I really was into when I first was starting to watch racing. So every Friday night I was there at the track, and I loved it, but obviously I didn't know how to get into it, and I didn't even think I probably could get into it. I literally knew nobody growing up, or even when I was in college, who raced or knew somebody that did race in a circle track network. Had no connections at all. So I remember I joined the motorsports class at Butte College, and one of the nights they passed out around a flyer, and the flyer was how to get into auto racing, and they had all the different kinds of auto racing listed there, and it kind of gave some information on how much it costs to get into it, how much it costs to maintain a race car in that kind of racing. And I remember seeing dirt track racing there on the very bottom, and it was the cheapest one to do. There was no membership fees, or at least not to get into. The entry fees were not that expensive, and you won money also. So I was like, well, that kind of sums it up right there. If I wanted to get into racing, it would be trying to start in the dirt track world. So I just started looking around on Craigslist, looking to see if any cars were for sale. I knew I wanted to start out in a beginner class, like a hobby stock class or a mini stock class. Ended up finding a mini truck, and it was in Chico, right there in town, and I ended up going over there, and the guy wanted like $3,000 for it. I had no money. I was a college student. Here I am, I think now I'm a sophomore, and yeah, I barely have money to go pay for food and stuff, So there's no way I was gonna come up with $3 grand to buy a race car with. So anyways, I found the car, I talked to the guy, I told him I didn't have very much money and I wanted to start racing. He was a nice guy, his name was Clinton Earl, and he kind of had some sympathy for me, and he knew that, you know, when he was a kid or whatever, the itch to race for him, he knew that same feeling, and he's like, you know what, I could make a deal with you. Basically what it come down to is, I talked him down to $1,500 for this piece of garbage mini truck. No offense, Clinton, but it was a ticking time bomb. I blew it up the first night, cracked the cylinder head in half, but ended up talking him down to $1,500, and I come up with a plan to sell my car, my daily driver, which was worth about $6 grand back then, and I was gonna have $6 grand to buy a race car, buy a trailer, and buy a tow vehicle with. And so first thing was first, I sold my car and I bought a truck for $3 grand, and then at that point I bought the trailer for under, I think I bought that for just like, I must have been $1,500. And then I went ahead and I bought the race car too, and I put it on the trailer and brought it back to my college rental home in Chico, and I started working on it. I started, you know, taking the numbers off, painting it, and I had no idea what I was getting into at that point. But that was the end of one season. I was 20 years old, so that was the end of, I guess, 2012 season, and so basically I had all off season to get my numbers on it and just get it ready to run for the next season. So I got it all ready to go, and March comes around and we start doing practice days, and I get in the car and I just thought it was the fastest thing ever. I was like, man, this thing is just hauling. Little did I know it was, you know, under 200 horsepower, and I was only going about 50 miles an hour. So you know, back then you think that that's really fast, but now here I'm doing near 100 on the track, and it's not even close. So anyways, went to the track for the first race. Didn't know what I was doing at all. Like I said, I cracked my cylinder head in half and actually broke, it was a Ford, 2.3 liter Ford, and it broke the cam towers. It snapped them all off. So basically that head was junk. But I ended up getting, I think, 4th place. I still finished the race on it. 4th place, and then maybe a week or two later I get something in the mail and I get a check, and it was for $100. I didn't even know if they're gonna pay me any money. I had no idea what was going on. So from that point on I was pretty much hooked, and one thing led to another, and I started racing their tracks and learning more and more. I still don't know a whole lot, or as much as I would like to know about, you know, maybe the setups on cars and stuff and how to read the track better. But the moral of the story here is that it's super easy to get into. I wouldn't say it's cheap, but it's the cheapest type of racing you're gonna find out there, besides maybe like an autocross, which you're not even racing anybody, you know, door to door with, or maybe like an amateur, you know, drag racing on weeknights or something. You're just racing yourself on your time, and you can probably bring your daily driver to that. But for a full-blown race car, it's definitely the cheapest way to get into. I recommend anybody who wants to get into it, you should start in the most beginner class you can find, because number one, the cost and everything, and it's just good to get your feet wet doing something that you know, you're not going to be racing guys who are super competitive, and then you get in their way not knowing what you're doing and starting fights and stuff. So I recommend anybody who wants to do that starting out a beginner class. But yeah, guys, that's basically it. That's how you get into racing. You just buy a car and shoot from the hip there. So I'm just about home now. That's my buddy's house, and I'm gonna start working on this car. So you guys stay tuned. I think I'm probably gonna make another video on the whole car thing. This video is kind of long, so you guys just go ahead and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Yeah.